So last Wednesday, there was a Metro Council meeting, and there was a lot to be talked about when it came to the stormwater utility fee, and then I promptly went into the woods after that. So this being our first chance to reconvene after the meeting, Metro Councilwoman Jenn Racca is in studio. Jenn, welcome back. How are you?
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. So what happened? What went down?
Ooh, you weren't watching?
No, I was not. I was busily packing for my retreat. So
Packing is a good word. I think most of us are still unpacking as to what went on.
Okay.
There were points whenever I was taking notes and I'd look over and be like, "What? Who just said what happened?" It was a lot. We had the vote. Ultimately, the most important thing is that it was removed. So
we're going to have to circle back on that because there's repercussions for that.
Correct.
Right. Correct. Not intangible repercussions right now, but we're still on the clock. But we'll get around to that later. I honestly, what I'm most concerned about here is what the parish attorney had to say about the misinterpretation of an NDA.
So I did ask several questions with regards to what he had to say. And I was trying to dig in and see where the confusion came from. And as I stated Wednesday night, we first heard about a gag order, and that came from Kelvin Hill with a meeting with the mayor, and he was speaking to a gag order, and he said it multiple times. Well, fast forward, we go into executive session, and then after the commentary comes out, and everybody said it multiple times. So NDA came out. We were asked to sign an NDA.
What's the difference between a gag order and an NDA?
So, you know what? Our parish attorney said that I was a lawyer and I should know. I know there's a difference. Mm-hmm. One is sweeping. One would be for the individual. So, with the NDA, I would not be allowed to disclose any information. A gag order, my understanding was on the body. Like it would be something that was handed down onto the entire body. But more importantly, our parish attorney was supposed to articulate the difference between an NDA and a gag order because he's our lawyer, right?
Okay.
And so while we're talking, we have the next meeting. We have a meeting, and you see Kelvin Hill comes up to the microphone and he says gag order, and then council members start adopting that language and they're saying gag order.
Right.
And then our parish attorney says gag order, and he says it so many times that all of the council they start saying gag order. So some of the confusion lied with it was an NDA. There was no gag order. Okay. And he said that the other night. There was never a gag order. There was no federal government gag order that prohibited the mayor's office from speaking to us or the parish attorney from speaking to us. It did not exist. There's no such thing.
Okay, but there was an NDA. Prompted by whom?
We tried to uncover that as well, and the NDA came from the parish attorney's office. It did not come from the federal government. And people, what astonished me to just no end, and council meetings, they're usually remarkable in the sense of you're like, what just happened? But was whenever different folks at the podium began to blame Garrett Graves. And saying that he did not have open communication. Well, Garrett Graves cleaned his house.
Yeah.
He called DOJ. He talked to EPA. He on the federal level, he cleaned his house and said, not here. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Us as city parish officers, officials, administration, attorneys, whatever our role is, we had a responsibility to clean ours.
Yeah.
And we didn't. So then we're going to deflect and say, well, Garrett Graves should have had open communication with everybody in the administration or everybody in the parish attorney's office. Excuse me, what? No.
No. If there's anybody in this whole thing that can keep his hands clean, it's Garrett Graves. Being mad at Garrett Graves for doing what Garrett Graves did is like being mad at Chris Nakamoto for finding out that the controller of cats was on meth.
So what would you prefer? Like, we are supposed to sit here and think our federal leaders are going to come and be accountable to our city parish office and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And we know the difference between an NDA that's given to us by the city or a gag order that doesn't even exist.
Right.
It's not his job. And thank him for doing what he did to clear up what was on his federal end. But making sure that our parish attorney or our governmental officials are telling us the right language, not his job.
Right.
Shouldn't be his problem either, but we made it his problem.
Well, but to be fair, he did.
Yep.
He made it his problem.
Hey, and he fixed it.
No, absolutely.
What would have happened had he not?
That's a darn good question.
What would have happened had he not? Where would the council be, and what information would we still be relying on two things? Had we not gone into the executive session where an NDA was brought to our attention,
Right.
or if we would have not reached out to Garrett Graves and said, hey, something's going on, doesn't seem right, can you help us out?
No, absolutely. Where would we be? We probably would be in a much different spot from the fee end. If the tone of the council was an NDA was going to be a no-go from the start. So, but from the fee end, I think that would have gotten a lot more consideration to ready, fire, aim on implementing that on property owners in Baton Rouge.
Go back. I beg you to go back and look whenever we were passing the utility district.
Oh, yeah.
There were Dwight and I were the only two that were opposed.
Mm-hmm.
And we were pressured in that conversation. We were told if we pass the utility district, then the federal government will be less likely to impose penalties and fines because it's proving that we're working towards a goal to remedy whatever's going on. So we're still sitting there like two of us.
Yeah.
Two of us. But everybody was ready to press that button, ready to move forward. And go back to the conversations where you had open meetings with your council people and the public.
Going back to the parish attorney real quick.
Yeah.
Has the mayor responded? Because this gap in communication is glaring.
So I'm going to hammer this point to death. It's not the mayor's responsibility to make sure that the parish attorney is informing her correctly. Now, the other night we had questions. Who do you represent?
Right.
Who is your client? And that there's an even deeper question there, and we're still trying to figure out that answer. And Mr. Dotson said that he can represent the mayor's office and he can represent us. Well, the mayor's office, it was my understanding that she felt misrepresented, that she felt like she was not provided the accurate information and all of the information.
Right.
So, but I can't speak for them, but based upon what the conversation was in front of the council the other night, she somewhat kicked back the responsibility to the parish attorney's office.
There was some chatter, if you will, about whether or not Andy Dotson should resign. Did that go anywhere?
So it didn't. It didn't. Cleve Dunn had an item that he had put on the agenda, speaking as to whether or not Andy Dotson should resign. That item got voted down because it was an emergency item.
Right. So it only took one vote to knock it off. It
only took one vote to knock it off. If you looked at our emergency items that night, council members took turns knocking everybody's off. There were no emergency items at all.
Yeah.
Will Andy Dotson resign? I don't know. Based upon what we saw at the microphone the other night, it doesn't look like it. It doesn't seem like it. Bob Abbott is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And that became another question. This is a reoccurring question. What are y'all doing about the mayor? Well, we don't do anything about the mayor. That's on the people. Y'all vote the mayor in. The council has power over Anderson Dotson or the parish attorney. We appoint that person.
Right.
And then when it comes to Bob Abbott, Anderson Dotson has power over Bob Abbott. We do not.
Okay, so y'all have power over appointing the parish attorney. So does that mean you also have power over removing the parish attorney?
We do.
And putting an item on the agenda as an emergency item would be different than deliberately going back and saying, or going forward and saying, when's the next time we could talk about this, introduce this as a real topic, not an emergency topic.
So that can happen now.
Okay.
That can happen now.
Is there a want to make that happen now? Not speaking specifically for yourself, just in general.
Speaking specifically for myself in general, I do believe that there are council members that are rumbling. And of course, there are things to deflect with regard to how and why. So
right.
Now the conversation is focused of, and coming from parish attorney's office and sources and friends that I've had in there is that, well, council members want another parish attorney. So they're just out to get us. Excuse me? We did not ask you to come to the microphone and not know the difference between a gag order and an NDA.
No. The straw man arguments that have been thrown up since this
But they're
started.
breeding. They're breeding and spreading like wildfire. And the fact that anybody would even have the audacity to say that, just to me, are you guilty? Why are you deflecting? Why can you not hold yourself accountable and take acceptance for what you've done. If you could, then we can move forward.
Yeah.
But that's not the case here. That's not what's happening.
Think about attorneys. Got to be good at arguing. All right, we got about 3 minutes left. Metro Councilwoman Jenn Racca in studio talking about the stormwater drainage fee, which we are still out of compliance with the EPA.
Correct.
This item cannot be voted on again for a year. Does that mean we're stuck where we're at for a year?
No.
Or can we take a little time, catch our breath, get our feet underneath us, find if there's other money elsewhere first, and then move forward with a plan to get back in compliance with the EPA?
So let's talk about compliance with the EPA, because we had deadline after deadline after deadline, but it's still my understanding and appreciation, it is a rolling deadline. It is not, there's not an absolute definitive date where we just get slapped with the EPA hammer.
Okay.
It's just not there. Now, we have an entire law firm that we hired, and we talked about Beveridge and Diamond.
Yeah. And
we can't receive communications as a client of the parish attorney's office. We're still not receiving communications as to what conversations are being had with them. We did a formal records request, and we're being told first that the 6 people, we're a body, we're a client. The body as a whole is the client, not individual council members. So the 6 people that requested it basically got shut down. Then we were told, so we said, well, we're all going to sign a document, all 12 of us, and potentially try to get it. Let's circulate the document. And they said, no, you can't do that. That violates public meetings law potentially. You have a quorum, so you can't do just the most. Well, the question then came up, well, what did council members do in the past? Well, we've never seen this before.
Right.
Well, then why is it happening right now? And if you remember, whenever we were looking at the Brazil Saxe billing records, we had police officer cases with police officer names in those billing documents that we requested over and over again. Mm-hmm. The first instance, they gave us billing records that were just there. It wasn't an actual billing document. It didn't have time, didn't have names. It wasn't redacted, but it was just not enough information for us to make any type of assessment. Well, we eventually got the billing records from Brazil Saxe, and we had to go to the parish attorney's office to review all of them. Okay. We couldn't make copies, but as the client, we were able to see privileged information. We were able to see information with regards to settlements and negotiations, all contained in those billing documents. Well, now here we are asking for essentially the same thing, and it's a nope.
See, that right there stinks in and of itself.
Big nope.
Because how can you tell that they're living up to the contract they signed, if they can't disclose anything that was within that contract?
And as a client, so the question is, as a client, whether it's 1 or 12 of us, if you were, let's say you got a DWI, I'm sorry, and you came to me as your lawyer and you said, hey, Jenn Racca, I want to see my file. Mm-hmm. I have to give you my file.
Right.
You are my client.
Right.
Where's my file? Yeah. Where is my city
and
parish?
That's basically what you're asking.
Please help me.
Okay, so back to you, and we're 2 minutes before we have to hit news. Where we're at with the EPA, though, is if it's a rolling deadline, how is that a deadline?
So the mayor's office provided documentation that said we needed January, we needed to show some sort of effort. But again, we have Garrett Graves with conflicting information that says there's no definitive timeline.
Right.
So our attorneys could tell us, hey, what position we're in, what we need to do, what amounts need to be looked at. We had another city parish person come and say, hey, it's $5 million. We owe the EPA $5 million. We can find that in the budget somewhere to make sure that we're compliant. Mm-hmm. Now, we have to have a maintenance plan and a program put in place for continued ongoing maintenance to become compliant. So I think that's where the additional $35 million came into play. However, the maintenance plan and that compliance, I don't think that January timeline is applied to that.
Okay.
But we do need to find something. We're all working together trying to figure it out. And regardless of what anybody says, this is a bipartisan effort. We're working on both sides of that.
Oh, no, absolutely.
We're working together trying to move forward. Now, obviously, you have your extremes that are always on one end or another, but the majority, we're working together trying to find some middle of the ground, some sort of plan to move forward.
Last one before I get you out of here, and I apologize, I've kept you way longer than I promised I would. But last one before I get you out of here, and that is, okay, bipartisan effort, yes, but what about different branches of government? How is the Metro Council working with the mayor right now? Because like when this whole thing started, it was coming in hot and heavy with the mayor in the crosshairs. Now this has shifted over to the parish attorney. How's the working relationship to take care of the rest of the business of the city?
So the mayor's door's always open.
Yeah.
I have to give her that credit. She welcomes
Fair.
us
That's
whenever we want to go in. She'll have meetings with us. I do believe there was confusion and misinformation, and we're trying to find the sources to where that came from. And I think we're getting pretty close based upon last week's meeting. But the reality of it is she's hosting meetings currently. If you want to go in and have questions and have candid conversations with her, you're able to go.
All right. So the long and the short of it is we're still not done.
No way.
She's Metro Councilwoman Jenn Racca. I always appreciate the time. We will have you back in very soon.
So much.
Super late for news, traffic.